Okay, let's unpack this. If you close your eyes for a second, um, just feel what it's like watching The Shining.
Hmm.
That sensation, of being pulled relentlessly through those endless, empty hotel corridors.
Yeah, it's chilling.
And that really unnerving sense that you're not alone, that maybe the very walls are watching you.
Right.
What is it about that film's look that just gets under your skin and stays there long after you've seen it?
It's a profound feeling, isn't it? That pervasive unease, this sense of something unseen, just like lurking right there.
Yeah,
It's completely baked into the visual experience.
absolutely. And today we're doing a deep dive into a key piece of technology that made so much of that unique, unsettling visual language possible.
Hmm.
We're talking about the Steadicam, and specifically its truly revolutionary, you could even say legendary, use in Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah, and we've gone through quite a stack of sources for this deep dive. Articles, research papers, interviews with, people who are actually there, Garrett Brown's own accounts.
The inventor himself.
Exactly. So we're covering the Steadicam's invention, Kubrick's very, very particular vision for how to use it.
Right.
That the intense, often grueling process of actually filming The Shining, the technical innovations that were literally forged on set because of the demands.
Yeah, created right there.
Right there. And of course, the film's lasting legacy on cinema. It's huge.
So our goal here is to pull out the most important nuggets from all this material, connect the dots, and really try to understand how this collaboration between, well, a brilliant inventor
Garrett Brown.
and a visionary, famously demanding director didn't just make a horror film, but fundamentally changed filmmaking. Changed it forever, really, and created that unforgettable, terrifying atmosphere of the Overlook Hotel.
So I guess to understand the impact, we kind of have to go back to the beginning, right? Before all that fluid gliding motion we associate with The Shining. Yeah. Filming dynamic shots that weren't, shaky was often a real headache.
A massive headache. Yeah, you start with Garrett Brown in the early 1970s. He was a cinematographer, and he was just, well, plain fed up with the limitations he was facing.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, you had handheld camera work. It could be dynamic, sure, but often jarring, unstable.
Shaky cam, yeah.
Right. On the other hand, if you wanted smooth motion, you were dealing with these enormous, really heavy pieces of equipment cranes or dollies running on tracks.
Immersive.
Totally. Garrett Brown mentioned having an 800-pound dolly for a camera that only weighed like 12 pounds.
Wow.
It just felt absurdly cumbersome. His goal was simple, conceptual anyway. He wanted to capture the natural stability of human vision.
Right, like how we see things.
Exactly. How you can walk or run and still see a stable image. He wanted to replicate that cinematically.
And his solution, well, it's the Steadicam. The core idea was just brilliant.
Yeah.
Stabilize a camera for smooth, fluid movement without needing tracks or a crane.
Game changer.
Totally. He developed a system with these key components. An isoelastic arm that's basically a spring arm that absorbs shocks and takes the weight. A vest the operator theirs, distributing that weight across their body. A gimbal for precise control over the camera's orientation. Think of it like a pivot. Allows smooth rotation.
Got it.
And a monitor, so the operator can see what they're filming without having to look through the eyepiece.
And to prove this wasn't just, theory, Brown created this now famous demo reel. He called them his 30 impossible shots.
Right, the legendary reel.
Yeah, these were dynamic movements, running upstairs, jumping off things, moving over uneven ground stuff that was literally impossible to film smoothly and stably before the Steadicam existed.
And that demo reel was incredibly influential. It really started gaining traction in Hollywood almost immediately.
Didn't take long.
No. Its feature film debut was in Bound for Glory back in '76. Garrett Brown operated it himself, actually.
Oh.
And there's this one complex Steadicam shot following a character through like 900 extras.
Yeah.
It helped contribute to the film winning an Academy Award for cinematography.
Incredible. And everyone remembers Rocky, also from '76, right?
Of course. The steps.
That iconic training montage, run up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, that was directly inspired by footage on Brown's demo reel.
Away!
Showing his wife running up those very steps with the Steadicam. It was also used in Marathon Man that same year.
So these early successes really validated the technology in a big way. Brown got a U.S. patent in '77 and received an Academy Award for Technical Achievement in '78. So it was clear this was a genuine breakthrough, not just some, passing fad.
And Garrett Brown, smartly, sent that game-changing demo reel to a few directors he thought might really appreciate it.
And one of them.
One of them, famously, was Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick saw the reel in 1974, and apparently his reaction was immediate and incredibly prescient.
What did he say?
He sent a telex back to Brown, declaring it would revolutionize the way films are shot, and then just simply stated that he considered himself a future customer.
Wow. Just like that.
Oh, it's like that. That early connection, years before The Shining was even filmed, really set the stage for, well, everything that came next.
And what's fascinating is what Kubrick saw in it. It wasn't just, oh, cool, we can run upstairs now.
Right, not just for stunts.
Exactly. It wasn't just for difficult terrain or those stun shots, although it could certainly do that. Kubrick saw the Steadicam as this fundamental tool to put the camera lens exactly where he wanted it in space and time.
Total freedom.
Completely freed from the physical constraints of dollies on fixed tracks or cranes with, limited reach.
And that vision directly influenced how he designed the Overlook hotel sets. They were built at EMI Elstree Studios in England, remember?
Right, not Colorado.
Not Colorado, all studio sets. But because they were built with the Steadicam in mind, they didn't necessarily need those traditional flyaway walls designed to be easily moved for camera setups. Ah, interesting.
Or even perfectly smooth floors that traditional dollies absolutely required. Brown actually noted that Kubrick was already puzzling over how to get long, smooth tracking shots on potentially imperfect studio floors before he even saw the Steadicam demo.
He was already thinking ahead. And the hedge maze is just a perfect physical example of this whole idea.
Huge departure from the book.
Massive. The book had those animate topiary animals, which would have been challenging to film convincingly back then.
To say the least.
Yeah. The maze in the film was specifically conceived because of the Steadicam's capabilities. Garrett Brown himself has said the sequence couldn't have been shot as intended without it.
Wow.
It became this contained physical arena just perfectly suited for the Steadicam to follow characters through those incredibly tight, winding paths, essential for that climax, the chase.
The themes, right. Entrapment.
Exactly. Entrapment, psychological unraveling, getting lost. And this, I think, is where it gets really interesting. The Steadicam in The Shining became more than just, a way to get a smooth shot. It became like a character itself.
Or a voice.
Yeah, or at least a significant narrative voice within the film.
Precisely. Its smooth, gliding motion, especially moving through those empty, eerie spaces of the hotel, creates what some sources describe as an unearthly tranquility. And that tranquility in the context of a horror film is just profoundly unsettling.
It absolutely feels like an eerie eye, doesn't it? Just this unseen, observing presence.
Or even the hotel's point of view. Like the building itself is watching the Torrances descend into madness.
Yeah, creepy.
It functions as a self-conscious narrative device, showing a freedom and autonomy rarely displayed prior in narrative cinema. It really embodies thematic concerns.
How so?
Well, sometimes it seems to represent Danny's perspective, innocent, low to the ground.
Right, the tricycle shots.
Exactly. Other times it feels like a stalker pursuing characters. And at other times it seems to embody this larger malevolent entity within the hotel.
The hotel itself.
Yeah, it's about translating emotional and philosophical content into movement that kind of penetrates the subconscious.
So the actual filming of The Shining, it became notorious for its length, its intensity. May 78 to October 79.
Long shoot.
Very long. It was an incredibly demanding production environment, largely due to Kubrick's, legendary perfectionism.
Garrett Brown famously put it, the word reasonable was not in Kubrick's lexicon.
Sounds about right.
It really was a true crucible for the technology and for the operators. This intense pressure, plus the close collaboration between Brown, the inventor and main operator, and Kubrick, the visionary director, it really pushed Steadicam tech and operating techniques to their absolute limits.
So artistic necessity was driving technical evolution.
Directly. In real time, right there on that set.
And several key technical developments, refinements, they were literally forged right there because the existing tech just wasn't quite enough for what Kubrick wanted.
One of the most famous was the low mode.
Yeah.
Or the inverted Steadicam configuration. This was developed specifically to capture Danny's perspective, putting the camera lens sometimes just inches from the floor.
Incredible. How did they do that?
Well, it involved rigging the camera to hang below the main Steadicam platform. So essentially operating it upside down.
Wow.
This was absolutely essential for getting that child's POV, conveying the immense, overwhelming scale of the hotel from his height.
Makes the hotel feel huge.
Exactly. And capturing the speed and feeling of those tricycle rides.
And to help achieve those super low angles and maintain the speed and control over distance, they developed the wheelchair rig.
Right, which sounds a bit confusing. It wasn't Steadicam on a wheelchair instead of the operator.
No, it was a platform.
It was a modified motion picture wheelchair used as a rolling platform for the Steadicam operator, so Brown could sit and focus purely on precise framing and operation, especially at speed and low angles over distance.
Yeah.
It significantly reduced the immense physical strain of running that heavy rig for those long, long takes.
Makes sense. It just underscores that the goal was getting that fluid motion, however they could manage it, even if not strictly body-mounted all the time.
Pragmatic.
Yeah.
And communication with Kubrick was also absolutely vital, especially given his demands for such precise framing.
Yeah, I bet.
An initial video assist system was apparently quite crude. It made it hard to show Kubrick exactly what the frame looked like in real time.
Nightmare for a perfectionist.
Totally. So they significantly improved it during production into a reliable wireless system. They were even concealing antennas on set to ensure clear transmission. This enhanced video assist was crucial for managing that demanding director-operator dynamic.
Gotta keep Kubrick's happy.
And make sure he saw, frame by frame, exactly what Brown was capturing.
They also had to create specific mounting hardware, right? Like the Garfield bracket.
Yeah, a custom piece to attach the Steadicam arm to standard Mitchell mounts those common camera mounts you find on tripods or dollies.
Right.
This allowed them to quickly mount the whole Steadicam system onto things like that wheelchair rig or other wheeled platforms. Just increased flexibility.
And Brown refined his operating technique, too.
He did. His two-handed technique, he really honed it on set for achieving incredibly stable starts and ends to shots and for precise control during slower scenes like dialogue. And he brought a prototype wireless focus and iris control system. This allowed the focus puller to make subtle, remote adjustments during complex moves, even in narrow spaces.
Freeing Brown up.
Exactly. Freeing Brown to concentrate solely on the camera's movement and framing. Critical for those complex shots.
And they use wide-angle lenses a lot.
Yeah, frequently. Like an 18mm or even a super wide 9.8mm canoptic lens with a Steadicam.
What did that allow?
Well, it let the camera get incredibly close to walls or objects while maintaining perspective, which really intensifies that feeling of immersion.
Right in there.
Yeah. It minimizes distortion in tight sets and allowed for these dramatic shifts in depth just by changing the lens height.
So these on-set innovations, they weren't just like nice extras. They were direct, necessary responses to Kubrick and really ambitious visual demands.
Absolutely. Pushing the technology far beyond its initial design and showing what was truly possible.
And these innovations enabled some of the most iconic Steadicam sequences ever filmed, chief among them, maybe the most famous, Danny's tricycle rides.
Oh, absolutely. Using that low-mode Steadicam, often on a wheelchair rig,
Yeah.
it completely puts you right there with Danny. You're seeing this vast, imposing hotel from a child's vulnerable, low-to-the-ground perspective.
It really makes the architecture feel impossibly immense and terrifying.
And it's not just visual, is it? The sound design is absolutely integral there.
Oh, yeah, the carpet versus the wood floor.
That dramatic shift from the almost silent movement over the soft carpet to that loud, echoing clatter as the wheels hit the polished wood floors. That fusion of the fluid visual movement and the jarring sound creates such powerful tension, and it emphasizes the eerie emptiness of those spaces.
Those long, uninterrupted takes, the smooth navigation around corners, that sudden change in sound, it all builds just immense suspense.
You're acutely aware of the space, anticipating what might be around the next bend.
And the camera passing, like within an inch of the walls.
Yeah.
It just intensifies that feeling of claustrophobic immersion even within this giant space. It was groundbreaking, really, how it integrated audiovisual elements so seamlessly through camera movement.
Then there's the hedge maze, another perfect application feels like.
Terrifying sequence.
The maze itself, which Kubrick specifically added for the film, works brilliantly, doesn't it? Both as a chilling physical arena and this potent metaphor for psychological states getting lost, being trapped.
Definitely.
And the Steadicam's ability to move so fluidly through those incredibly tight, snowy paths just heightens the sense of entrapment and panic during that chase.
And Garrett Brown has talked about how unbelievably difficult that sequence was to actually shoot.
Oh, I bet.
Imagine running backward through deep salt and styrofoam snow and heavy oil smoke, often having to look behind him to guide his steps while also trying to precisely frame the shot.
That's multitasking on another level.
And he frequently used that super wide 9.8mm lens kept low to the ground to get the right combination of speed and perspective.
And what's striking is that Virtually every frame of that climactic chase in the maze was shot with the Steadicam.
Really? All of it?
Pretty much. Instead of relying on rapid cuts, which is, typical in chase scenes to create energy disorientation.
Right.
Kubrick used those long, continuous Steadicam takes to fully immerse you, the viewer, in the subjective experience of being lost and pursued.
Yeah.
It fosters this truly palpable sense of subjective horror that wouldn't be possible in traditional editing.
Other shots stand out too, though. Think about the sequence with Wendy backing up the stairs with the baseball bat.
Oh yeah, intense.
The Steadicam follows her, maintains this unsettling intimacy, placing you right there in her terrified position. Apparently, one single shot on those stairs took 36 takes.
36. Wow.
Ooh.
The patience, or lack thereof, depending how you see it.
Huh. And beyond those famous standout moments, the general use of the Steadicam, just tracking through corridors and rooms throughout the film, that establishes that pervasive eerie eye, right?
Yep, the hotel watching.
The sense that the hotel itself is observing the characters. This contributes so significantly to the film's, what some call its painful embodied nature, where the audience feels physically implicated in the dread.
Yeah, you feel it. Even subtle movements, slight side-to-side or forward drifts and seemingly quiet scenes, they introduce this low-level, almost subconscious unease.
Subtly foreshadowing the madness.
Exactly. It shows the camera wasn't just used for action. It was constantly, relentlessly building atmospheric dread.
So let's talk a bit more about how all these technical applications specifically craft the film's unique nightmare atmosphere and contribute to its psychological depth.
Well, as we touched on, the Steadicam's smooth gliding motion creates that detached, almost supernatural viewpoint, the hotel's eye view, the eerie eye.
It feels inhuman.
Right. It moves in a way that doesn't feel quite physically possible for a person, and this really amplifies this sense of inescapable fate, of being observed by something non-human.
And what's so brilliant about it is how it subverts our expectations, Normally, smooth, stable camera movement is, well, comforting.
Yeah, grounds you.
It makes the audience feel secure, grounded in the space. But in The Shining, the Steadicam's relentless, almost unnatural smoothness in these deeply unsettling contexts and empty corridors, terrifying encounters, it becomes a source of profound dread.
It feels wrong.
Exactly. It suggests an unseen, perhaps malevolent, non-human agency guiding the camera. Kubrick completely recontextualized the technical feature to generate horror.
Yeah, take something familiar and makes it alien. That unnaturally steady camera becomes deeply unsettling. Feels like cold, distant observation. And as we mentioned with the tricycle and maze sequences, the Steadicam's ability to execute those long, unbroken takes is just crucial for sustaining tension and dread.
No escape through editing.
Right. It denies the audience the psychological relief that cuts normally provide. You're just locked into the scene, experiencing the unfolding terror in real time. It fosters that sense of being trapped alongside the characters.
Which heavily influenced the slow burn style you see in a lot of horror since then.
Absolutely. And despite the massive scale of the overlook, the Steadicam's navigation of relatively narrow spaces, those corridors, the maze paths, creates this intense feeling of claustrophobia, entrapment.
Even in a huge hotel.
Yeah, its ability to stay intimately close to walls and objects really reinforces that physical sense of being confined.
And the camera's movement itself often directly suggests a spectral presence, right? A viewpoint not tied to any human character.
It lurks with a menacing presence, as one source put it, visually embodying the unseen forces at work in the hotel.
So the Steadicam helps define the hotel as alive.
As a living, breathing entity, yeah. An omnipresent force that isn't just a location, but is actively observing, influencing, trapping the characters.
And it interacts so powerfully with Kubrick's other visual trademarks, like those famous static symmetrical compositions.
The one-point perspective shots.
Exactly. The fluid, animate camera moving through those rigidly ordered, almost sterile architectural spaces. It just heightens the psychological horror. It feels like this malevolent, unseen force operating within a seemingly perfect, controlled environment.
Of course, achieving all this groundbreaking visual work was incredibly difficult, even hazardous on set.
Oh, notoriously so. Kubrick's demanding perfectionism was legendary. It meant an astonishing number of takes.
Right. Sources mention rarely being satisfied before 20 takes for a shot, sometimes even 30. Even that 36 takes for the stair shot.
Garrett Brown recounts the very first day involved 30 takes in 110-degree Safru heat on the ballroom set.
Oof, that level of repetition was just physically and mentally exhausting, you can imagine. But Brown also acknowledged it allowed him to refine his technique under extreme pressure.
Trial by, well, repetition.
Yeah, and there were significant physical and technical difficulties for Brown and the crew beyond just the number of takes.
Like what?
Well, Kubrick demanding extreme framing accuracy, sometimes specifying details as small as a character's nostril being in a particular spot,
Oh my God.
which was incredibly tough to achieve consistently with those early, relatively crude video assist systems they had.
Oh, can't imagine the stress.
And just the sheer physical exertion of operating that heavy Steadicam rig for hours on end, performing complex maneuvers, running backward, doing it all in challenging environments like the maze.
Yeah.
It was immense.
Navigating those complex sets at speed, maintaining precise framing, keeping the camera in focus, and simultaneously avoiding obstacles. That requires truly exceptional skill.
And maintaining focus, especially with those wide lenses and the resulting shallow depth of field, that was a constant challenge for the focus puller working alongside Brown.
Right, a whole other person dealing with the pressure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even the innovative wheelchair rig wasn't without its own issues. Tire blowouts were apparently a problem.
Ah.
And achieving smooth starts and stops could be tricky.
Yeah.
Brown famously described it as like carrying a full punch bowl in a decelerating rickshaw.
That's a great image.
And what's truly remarkable, maybe underscores the risks involved, were the conditions on the hedge maze set.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned the smoke.
For 3 months, they were working in intense heat temperatures, could exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Inside a studio.
Inside a studio.
Yeah.
Surrounded by flammable materials like the salt and styrofoam snow, dry pine needles from the artificial hedges, and they were using that oil-based smoke for atmosphere.
Which you said is illegal now.
Yeah, for such indoor uses, due to the fire risk, it was apparently quite thick.
So the fire hazard was significant and real.
Very real. The crew was acutely aware of the danger. Sources say they sometimes contemplated how they'd even escape the labyrinth if a fire did break out. Garrett Brown sometimes wore a gas mask because of the heavy smoke, and the corrosive salt used for the snow actually rotted through his boot.
Wow. Just incredible dedication.
It truly highlights the risks involved in pioneering new technology and techniques back then. Before the kind of standardized safety protocols we expect today, it was a trial by fire, almost literally, pushing both the tech and the operators to their absolute limits.
Despite all that, or maybe, like you said, because of all those immense challenges and the innovations they spurred, the work done on The Shining left this just enduring legacy.
Oh, profoundly. It showcased the Steadicam's full potential like nothing before it.
Right.
It proved it wasn't just a tool for, simple tracking shots or navigating stairs,
Right.
but a sophisticated instrument capable of contributing deeply to narrative, psychology, atmosphere. The film's iconic imagery is truly inseparable from the Steadicam's fluid movements.
And the film's global impact, I mean, directed by someone as famous and respected as Kubrick, that accelerated the Steadicam's adoption across the entire industry, didn't it?
Massively. Seeing what could be done with it in The Shining made the technology highly visible, understandable to both audiences and filmmakers. It created huge demand, investment. It was arguably the Steadicam's killer app.
Made everyone want one.
Pretty much. And its influence on filmmaking, particularly horror and thriller genres, has been absolutely massive. That fluid, immersive tracking, the camera acting as a character or unseen presence,
The low-angle pursuit shots.
the ability to navigate tight spaces while maintaining flow, that whole eerie eye perspective, these became powerful tools that were widely adopted. It definitively showed camera movement itself could be a primary source of suspense and dread.
It really provided a new cinematic vocabulary, didn't it? Offering filmmakers novel ways to evoke subjective psychological states, embody unseen presences, use architectural space as this dynamic narrative element.
Yeah, it helped push cinema towards more psychologically nuanced, visually immersive horror experiences.
And after The Shining, the Steadicam was, well, widely embraced, understood not just as a gadget, but as this complex instrument.
Right. Requiring significant skill, artistry, physical endurance to operate effectively. Garrett Brown himself went on to operate Steadicam on over 100 more films,
Wow.
including huge movies like Return of the Jedi, using and refining techniques he'd honed under the demanding conditions of The Shining.
And that intense collaborative environment on Kubrick's set, that really highlighted the crucial value of the partnership between a visionary director and a highly skilled, inventive operator, especially when pushing visual boundaries.
Definitely encouraged directors to seek out collaborative partners who could help solve complex technical challenges in real time.
So ultimately, it's just a powerful story of innovation, both technical and artistic, driven by this uncompromising artistic vision.
Exactly. So to kind of summarize our deep dive here, The Shining's revolutionary and deeply unsettling visuals came from this truly remarkable convergence. Stanley Kubrick's visionary clarity, Garrett Brown's inventive genius and extraordinary operating skill, and the groundbreaking Steadicam technology itself.
It wasn't just the tech, was it? It was human creativity, fueled by this relentless pursuit of perfection, pushing those boundaries in real time on a really challenging set.
Absolutely. The Steadicam in The Shining wasn't a gimmick, it was fundamental to the storytelling, building unparalleled suspense, enhancing the film's themes of madness and entrapment.
And creating a truly visceral, unforgettable experience.
Exactly, an experience that still deeply affects audiences decades later.
So maybe the next time you're watching a film and you feel that chilling sense of being watched, or you marvel at an impossibly smooth gliding camera move that puts you right in the middle of the action, perhaps take a moment. Consider the unearthly tranquility of The Shining's camera and ask yourself whether the camera itself, silently gliding through that cinematic space, is telling you something just beneath the surface.